The injustices are breathtaking. And that's why our country is in such turmoil and people are upset. And the real heroes, I think, doesn't mean that no, let's just say, some of our real heroes were there on January the 6th, actually putting their lives on the line when they saw the police attacking the people.
So that is a panel at CPAC. The woman speaking is right-wing radio host Sandy Rios, talking about how the rioters on January 6th, those are the true heroes because they stopped the cops from attacking people. Why were the cops attacking people? Well, there was a riot going on. It could be related, I don't know, we'll look into it. And look, by the way, cops can go too far, cops can get too violent, happens all the time. We cover it all the time. If you believe that that's what was happening, that none of it was justified, feel free to make that case. Sandy Rios does not make that case. What Sandy Rios is doing is what so many right-wingers have done over the past few years. Just try to, in an evidence-free fashion, by rejecting what actually happened on that dark day, imply that they were the true heroes. Rewriting history when we desperately need to understand that history to stop it from happening again. Now, for context, on that panel, you didn't just have Sandy Rios, you also had former Assistant Attorney General Jeffrey Clark and Gerri Perna, the aunt of Matthew Perna, a participant in the events of January 6th, who, and this is where this turns even darker, tragically took their own life after being prosecuted for participating in the insurrection of January 6th. So, you can understand how she at least is gonna take this very seriously, but this goes far beyond her feelings about her own family. Rios asked Perna if she was in contact with the families of other January 6 defendants. Perna affirmed that she did and said that a number of others have reached out to her about considering committing suicide. Quote, they are pushing these people to the brink of insanity. And as we have said from the very beginning, cops can go too far, and imprisonment is not what it should be in America. There should be no solitary confinement. That's something that many of us at TYT have advocated for many years. Every once in a while, Marjorie Greene goes and says that these particular prisoners should not be in solitary confinement. She does not want to extend it to a single person beyond that. What she considers horrific conditions for those who tried to overthrow the results of an election are perfectly fine to put on the backs of literally anyone else. And that's where we really have an issue here. Do you believe that there should be consequences for illegal actions, or don't you? Look, not every single person that was near the Capitol on January 6th deserves to spend the rest of their life behind bars. And I'll remind you that generally the judgments have not been particularly harsh. But we also can't pretend that it wasn't what it was, that this was not a group of people who firmly believed the lies they'd been told by Donald Trump and right-wingers in the media, that if they get in there, if they disrupt the certification, maybe a couple of Congress people get killed, maybe a VP gets murdered, that Donald Trump gets to be their king still. That is clearly what was motivating many of them. And the idea that they should just walk free because being in jail sucks, that's not convincing. That's just not persuasive. Yaz, what do you think?
We might have millions of people watching this show, but you can be the difference maker because we just need 1% of our audience to be paid members, and then this show can be around forever. So you can make that difference. Click join now.
Yeah, this is kind of what I was talking about in one of the other segments. You know, the Republican Party has a discourse problem, and I think the reason why they have this problem is because they're disingenuous. It's like if you're a liar, right? You have to lie even more to keep up with whatever the initial lie is that you told. So if you pretend to have a value system when you don't actually have a value system, you're gonna run into problems when it comes to defending those so-called values, and it's gonna be very difficult to not fall into hypocrisy. And I think the Democrats, at least the progressives, I'll say, I think we are much more consistent in our messaging because it comes from a place of value, right? We understand the things that we're for, we understand the things that we will not tolerate, won't tolerate. And I think that's why you see on the Democratic side, if Joe Biden does something bad, there are not Democrats on Twitter saying, oh no, he didn't actually do anything wrong. This is all Republican slander. The Democrats are probably the first ones to tell, maybe not the Democrats again, talking about progressives more specifically, but we'll be the first ones to tell you, no, that wasn't cool what he did. And yeah, there should be consequences for it. No, we're not happy about how he's handling this. We're the first ones to say so.
Yeah, it's crazy because I'm actually hearing this woman call these people heroes is quite hilarious because I remember the summer of 2020 when we had our great racial awakening here in America, where people were pissed off about what the cops were doing. The cops specifically, I remember a couple of things. All the hemming and hawing from right wingers, the hush tones about these Best Buys that were looted in CVS, and it was the gravest thing that ever happened, that people walked away with free Minute Maid juice. It was just terrible, right? And back then, the freaking cops were a sainted group of people amongst the right wing. Like, the cops could do no wrong, and anytime people opposed the police, they were completely crazy and unhinged, and it was the worst thing ever. However, these rioters, these quote unquote protesters, killed some cops in the process, damage all kinds of property, and we hear nothing about it. In fact, we hear that these guys are heroes. And then again, I don't seem to remember progressives being like, well, these guys that looted in the riot, if the police catch them, they shouldn't be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Nobody said that, but yet here we are with these right wingers calling a bunch of criminals the heroes of the story. It's just crazy how that works.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I don't know that a double standard does exist between those two, but I would argue that sometimes double standards make sense when situations are not the same. I love Best Buy. I'm not sure it's as sacred as the results of an election. Theoretically, the stakes here are different, so our standards could be different. I'm not even saying they are. I'm just saying that they potentially could be. But I want to zoom out for just a sec to remind people that what's happening at CPAC, the attempt to rewrite what January 6th was, is not a new thing. Like Donald Trump just earlier this month, he obviously it was him that sent the rioters there. He blamed the riot on Nancy Pelosi, or maybe Nikki Haley, he's not sure who, and suggested that the rioters were not in the wrong by insisting that, quote, there were no guns, there were no anything except when they shot Ashley Babbitt. And here is the thing, I understand that Ashley Babbitt is raised up as a martyr by all of these people, and it will never stop being weird to me that they are more mad at the people who are defending the Capitol, as people were literally like World War Z-ing through the windows and doors, including Ashley Babbitt. She was pushing through a window into a line of people who were holding guns raised. I don't know anything about everything that happened about that, but it seems like a weird course of action. They're more mad at those people than they are at Donald Trump for sending her. It is indisputable that if Donald Trump had not lied to these people, Ashley Babbitt would be alive today. She is dead because of Donald Trump and people like him. And they're not mad at Donald Trump. They're not mad at any of them, even though he lied about the election. And he also, by the way, lied. I know the fact checking is utterly irrelevant in 2024. There were no guns. Well, except for the guns, which there were, because there were guns. In fact, January 6 defendants have admitted in court to having guns on them when they breached the Capitol and others who were around the Capitol. There was in fact a group of guys in tactical armor and AR-15s who confronted a group of cops and somehow lived through that experience. That's not always how it goes when it's not a group of right wingers. And by the way, when they talk about there being no weapons, it was just a group of tourists moving through the Capitol. The Secret Service confiscated 269 knives or blades, 242 canisters of pepper spray, 18 brass knuckles, what a throwback, 18 tasers, 6 pieces of body armor, 3 gas masks, 30 batons or blunt instruments, including baseball bats, and 17 miscellaneous items like scissors, needles, or screwdrivers. But I want you to bear in mind that simply because some of their weapons were taken away, you need to bear in mind that these people were creative, lest we forget that they tried to bludgeon the life out of cops with Trump flagpoles and fire extinguishers. And for some reason, there's no talk of the heroic cops defending our elected officials as the life was being beaten out of them with a flagpole with a Trump flag on the end of it. So look, I understand it's probably pointless to try to wage this war to get people to accept reality, but that's what January 6th actually was.
Yeah, I'm just tired of this conversation because this has been going on for 3 years, and it is a bit of interesting political discourse because it's also inconsistent, and it's like what you were saying before. The Republicans have an issue with short-term thinking, so they will say whatever they need to say that is the most impressive and the most audacious at the moment, just to get some clicks, just to get people riled up, right? They'll say whatever they need to say that's convenient at the time, and then they'll just go to lunch.
I tend to believe I don't think that we should be, punishing these guys outside of whatever the law is, but whatever's on the books, we should be prosecuting them to the fullest extent of whatever is on the books for whatever crimes they committed. That's been my stance on the entire thing from the beginning. If you committed a crime and you got caught, they're taking you to court and you're finished. And I'm completely fine with that.